Will you consider running for president in 2016? Would you just like to make your declaration now, and we could conclude this interview?
Well, that would be fascinating to me as well as everyone else. You know, I've said I really don't believe that that's something I will do again.
You made some news recently in Australia when you ruled out running again for office in 2012 and 2016. Why? So you're done with elective office?
I am. I am very happy doing what I'm doing, and I am not in any way interested in or pursuing anything in elective office.
What would it take to convince you to run in 2016?
That's all hypothetical, because right now I have no intention of running.
In Moscow, 3 years ago, you told me, I have absolutely no interest in running for president, none. You're never going to run for president again?
I have absolutely no interest in running for president again. None.
2 years ago, you said the exact same thing in Australia. You said, talk about the future, you said you're not running for president in 2012 or 2016. What about 2020? And yet, in the past few days, a PAC called Ready for Hillary has been launched. Can you still say with a straight face that that there's no way you would consider running for president?
Sitting here right now, that is certainly what I believe, and the answer is no.
Right.
I don't know how many more.
But you didn't say never.
Well, I say no, never, not at all. I don't know what else to say.
Are you saying you wouldn't entertain another run?
I have absolutely no belief in my mind that that is going to happen, that I have any interest in it happening. Everyday Americans need a champion, and I want to be that champion. So you can do more than just get by. You can get ahead and stay ahead, because when families are strong, America is strong. So I'm hitting the road to earn your vote, because it's your time, and I hope you'll join me on this journey. I'm Hillary Clinton. I have been proud and privileged to serve as First Lady, as a senator from New York, and as Secretary of State. I'm the granddaughter of a factory worker and the grandmother of a wonderful one-year-old child. And every day I think about what we need to do to make sure that opportunity is available, not just for her, but for all of our children. I have spent a very long time, my entire adult life, looking for ways to even the odds to help people have a chance to get ahead, and in particular, to find the ways for each child to live up to his or her God-given potential.
I think it's absurd to suggest she's a friend of children who are in need or families. This is a woman who, when her husband was governor, I first met her at that time when I went down to interview him for the Los Angeles Times, and he was starting his presidential run. And they were bragging about their welfare reform, which destroyed what existed of support for poor children in Arkansas. Then as president, her husband, with her full-throated approval, destroyed the aid to families with dependent children, which 70% of the people on that program were children. It was the major federal program to help poor people and poor families. And in the cynicism of the Clinton administration, they destroyed that program, and we don't even have an accounting of poor children anymore. They're all off the radar. So that's just utter nonsense. And then her husband, after all, and she again was a full-throated support. She was very close to Robert Rubin, to Lawrence Summers, to the people in the Clinton administration who gave us the radical deregulation of Wall Street, which caused incredible misery in the Great Recession. The Clinton signing on the collateralized debt obligation law, which allowed all that junk to be legal. The Commodity Futures Modernization Act, the Financial Service Modernization Act, the Reverse Glass-Steagall. So they're the ones that opened the door to the Wall Street thieves that brought on the Great Recession. And then as senator, she's carried water for Wall Street faithfully. And then finally, if we're going to run for somebody who has experience as Secretary of State, I'd rather support John Kerry. After all, it's been a great relief to see Kerry as opposed to Hillary Clinton. We finally have some rational foreign policy and peacemaking with with Iran, with Cuba. Where was Hillary Clinton? And let me say, one reason I could never vote for Hillary Clinton is that her attack on Edward Snowden, her attack on the whistleblowers, to call them traitors, to talk about these people. And here is a woman who knew what the government was doing and spying on the American people. You know, she didn't tell us. She didn't trust the State Department with her email, but she never told us that the State Department, the CIA, and the NSA were spying on the emails of all the Americans. No, but she thinks that's fine. She's just going to keep her email in her garage, you know. So I find her to be a center of cynicism and opportunism and really quite reckless.
She's in strong command of the Democratic field, but a new CNN ORC poll shows more people view her unfavorably than at any point since 2001. A growing number say she's not honest and trustworthy, 57%, up from 49% in March.
Plenty of politicians evolve on issues, but even some Democrats believe you change your positions based on political expediency. You were against same-sex marriage, now you're for it. You defended President Obama's immigration policies, now you say they're too harsh. You supported his trade deal dozens of times. You even called it the gold standard. Now, suddenly last week, you're against it. Will you say anything to get elected?
Well, actually, I have been very consistent over the course of my entire life. I have always fought for the same values and principles.
Oh, I think that everybody is in favor of free and fair trade, and I think that NAFTA is proving its worth.
You know, I have been a critic of NAFTA from the very beginning. I was one of the voices in the administration warning about NAFTA.
Your husband received $800,000 for 4 speaking engagements, ostensibly in support of the trade deal, or by a group that supports the trade deal. You've given your own money to your campaign. Is that a conflict of interest? Is that a conflict of interest?
I mean, and how many angels dance on the head of a pin? I have really nothing to. I mean, how do you answer that?
We are making progress toward finalizing a far-reaching new trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The so-called TPP will lower barriers, raise standards, and drive long-term growth across the region.
The United States is engaging in the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade negotiations.
We're pursuing a regional agreement with the nations of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
We are also pressing ahead with negotiations for the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
We are very committed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
We're excited about the innovative trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
You know, take the trade deal. I did say when I was Secretary of State 3 years ago that I hoped it would be the gold standard. It was just finally negotiated last week. And in looking at it, it didn't meet my standards.
Secretary Clinton, though, with all due respect, the question is really about political expediency. Just in July, New Hampshire, you told the crowd you, quote, take a backseat to no one when it comes to progressive values. Last month in Ohio, you said you plead guilty to, quote, being kind of moderate and center. Do you change your political identity based on who you're talking to?
No, I think that like most people that I know, I have a range of views, but they are rooted in my values and my experience.
Just for the record, are you a progressive or are you a moderate?
I'm a progressive.
You know, I get accused of being kind of moderate and center. I plead guilty.
Let me ask you this about some domestic issues in New York State. This state's always the sort of the social beginnings of so much of this country. People come here, a lot of immigrants. The New York Times recently began posting the celebrations of gay unions. Not just straight people getting married, but gay people who want to announce their unions. Do you think New York State should recognize gay marriage?
No.
No. Okay.
All right, so here I go. Here I'm going to ask you a question, and first of all, I should preface this. I don't know if you know this, but I am gay.
What?
I believe that marriage is not just a bond, but a sacred bond between a man and a woman.
Same with the gay rights movement. You know, we're sick of homophobia, we're sick of being discriminated against, we want marriage equality, and we're starting in the States, and we're going to keep going until we get it at the highest court of the land.
I genuinely want to know what in your heart has changed that's going to change the direction of this country. Like what in you, like not your platform, not what you're supposed to say. Like how do you actually feel that's different than you did before? Like what were the mistakes? And how can those mistakes that you made be lessons for all of America for a moment of reflection on how we treat black people in this country?
Obviously, I know more about the civil rights movement in the old days because I had a lot of involvement in working with people. So they had a plan, this piece of legislation, this court case we're going to make, et cetera, et cetera. I think that there has to be a reckoning. I agree with that. But I also think there has to be some positive vision and plan that you can move people toward. I mean, once you say, you know, this country has still not recovered from its original sin, which is true. Once you say that, then the next question by people who are on the sidelines, which is the vast majority of Americans, the next question is, well, so what do you want me to do about it? What am I supposed to do about it? That's what I'm trying to put together in a way that I can explain it and I can sell it. Because in politics, if you can't explain it and you can't sell it, it stays on the shelf.
The piece that's most important, and I stand here in your space, and I say this as respectfully as I can, but if you don't tell black people what we need to do, then we won't tell you all what you need to do.
Well, I'm not telling you, I'm just telling you to tell me.
What I mean to say is that this is and has always been a wet problem of violence. It's not, there's not much that we can do to stop the violence against us.
Well, if that is
a conversation that I push back.
I understand what you're saying.
Also respectfully.
Yeah. Well, respectfully, if that is your position, then I will talk only to white people about how we are going to deal with the very real problems.
That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. No. But like what I'm saying is, what you just said was a form of victim blaming. Right? You were saying that what the Black Lives Matter movement needs to do to change white hearts is.
No, I'm not talking about.
Look,
I don't believe you change hearts. I believe you change laws, you change allocation of resources, you change the way systems operate. You're not going to change every heart. You're not.
I mean, if we're honest, for a lot of well-meaning, open-minded white people, the sight of a young black man in a hoodie still evokes a twinge of fear.
Biggest vulnerability she has is people seeing her as too political, too calculating, too trying to have it all ways. Last night, several times, she walked right into that stereotype.
When asked whether she supports a proposal by the New York State governor to issue driver's licenses to illegal immigrants,
I certainly recognize why Governor Spitzer is trying to do it.
First she said this.
It makes a lot of sense. What is the governor supposed to do?
5 seconds later, this.
Do I think this is the best thing for any governor to do? No.
Unless I missed something, Senator Clinton said two different things in the course of about 2 minutes.
I can't tell whether she was for it or against it.
I certainly do remember that trip to Bosnia.
The welcoming ceremony had to be moved inside because of sniper fire.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
But those of us on that trip recall it differently. Instead of running for cover, Clinton was greeted by a schoolgirl who read her a poem of welcome. Accompanying the First Lady, Chelsea Clinton, singer Sheryl Crow, and comedian Sinbad to entertain the troops. although Clinton's C-17 did make a corkscrew landing, standard for a battle zone.
But a Reuters photo taken that day paints a different picture. Clinton shaking hands with U.S. Army officers just off the Tuzla Air Base runway, her head held high.
You said, I remember landing under sniper.
No, wait, that's what I said when I was sleep deprived. You can read my book, and I said something very different. Yeah, I misspoke. Yeah, I totally misspoke. You know, I've talked about this endlessly. I wrote about it, and I don't know what I was thinking. Because, yeah, we were told that we had to land under, you know, some threats, and the military did a great job. I was the first lady taken to a war zone since Eleanor Roosevelt. But that was just sleep deprivation or something. I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicle.
Governor Chafee, you were the only Republican in the Senate to vote against the Iraq War. You say Secretary Clinton should be disqualified from the presidency because she voted in favor of using force in Iraq. She has since said that her vote was a mistake. Why isn't that good enough?
We just heard Senator Sanders say that it's the worst decision in American history. That's very significant. The worst decision in American history. I just heard from Senator Sanders. So as we look ahead, if you're going to make those poor judgment calls at critical time in our history, we just finished with the Vietnam era, getting back into another quagmire. If you're looking ahead, and you're looking at someone that made that poor decision in 2002 to go into Iraq when there was no real evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I know, because I did my homework. And so that's an indication of how someone will perform in the future, and that's what's important.
Any vote that might lead to war should be hard, but I cast it with conviction. In the 4 years since the inspectors left, Saddam Hussein has worked to rebuild his chemical and biological weapons stock, his missile delivery capability, and his nuclear program. He has also given aid, comfort, and sanctuary to terrorists. It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare, and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons.
When the United States takes a position, we're doing it on the basis of very convincing evidence.
Do you believe we could have disarmament without regime change?
I doubt it. I can support the president. I can support an action against Saddam Hussein because I think it's in the long-term interests of our national security. I was one who supported giving President Bush the authority, if necessary, to use force against Saddam Hussein. I believe that that was the right vote. If I had been president in October of 2002, I would have never asked for authority to divert our attention from Afghanistan to Iraq, and I certainly would never have started this war.
Look, I know that there have been a lot of questions about Iraq posed to candidates over the last weeks. I've made it very clear that I made a mistake, plain and simple.
Another international issue that you signed in on last year was the Alberta Clipper, a pipeline from Alberta that brings tar sands, oil sands, directly into Wisconsin to the U.S. Midwest. This is some of the dirtiest fuel in the world. And how can the U.S. be saying climate change is a priority when we're mainlining some of the dirtiest fuel that exists?
Well, there hasn't been a final decision made.
Are you willing to reconsider it?
Probably not. And you know, we haven't finished all of the analysis. So as I say, we've not yet signed off on it, but we are inclined to do so, and we are for several reasons. Going back to one of your original questions, we're either going to be dependent on dirty oil from the Gulf or dependent on dirty oil from Canada.
As president, would you sign a bill, yes or no, please, in favor of allowing the Keystone XL pipeline?
Well, This is President Obama's decision, and I am not going to second guess him because I was in a position to set this in motion, and I do not think that would be the right thing to do. So I want to wait and see what he and Secretary Kerry decide. If it's undecided when I become president, I will answer your question.
Right before this debate, Secretary Clinton's campaign put out a lot of reversals on positions on Keystone and many other things.
I never took a position on Keystone until I took a position on Keystone.
Hillary, not just Bill, but Hillary, got millions in personal payments for speeches from the Keystone Pipeline promoters in Canada after she left office as Secretary of State. Hillary had a lot of power as Secretary of State, but the one thing that she absolutely controlled personally was the approval of the Keystone Pipeline. That had to get a certification from the State Department because it crossed international borders. And if it didn't get that certification, the project was dead. While she served as Secretary of State, Bill got $8.4 million in personal speeches, not foundation grants, money right into Hillary's and his bank account for speeches in Canada. And then after Hillary left office, she picked up where he left off and got up to $2 million, 1.3 to 1.8 million, in speeches in Canada before Keystone groups, many of them the exact same groups that Bill had spoken before. One of them was a major bank in Canada that had been cited in 2003 by the SEC and fined $42 million for its involvement in the Enron bankruptcy. And it was a major supporter of the Keystone Pipeline. In fact, on its board sat the lobbyist for Keystone in Washington. The Vancouver and the Montreal Board of Trade sponsored speeches for both Bill and Hillary. And the Board of Trade included board members who were very key in the whole pipeline process. What did Hillary do in return for this money? Well, her bias in favor of the Keystone Pipeline was manifest. Now, I support Keystone. I think it's a good idea. But I do not think it's a good idea for the decision maker in the United States to receive millions of dollars of bribes in order to approve it. Hillary designated a company to review the Keystone Pipeline, an impartial company, to determine whether it would bring environmental damage or not. And it turned out that the company had previously worked for TransCanada, which was the sponsor of the pipeline. And many of its consultants had been on the TransCanada payroll, a fact which they hid and tried to disguise, but ultimately came out when Greenpeace and some other environmental groups sued under the Freedom of Information Act. And her bias in favor of Keystone was quite apparent. In fact, while the review process was going on, she predicted that it would be approved, which is, a judge predicting the plaintiff's going to win when the court case starts. So this is an instance in which Hillary and Bill both were clearly on the take in an effort to get approval of the Keystone Pipeline. Now, a lot of Clinton's defenders have said there's not a shred of evidence of these conflicts of interest. Well, and there's no smoking gun. Well, yeah, because she erased all of her emails. And it's a deliberate effort to conceal all this, so there is no smoking gun. But when you find a juxtaposition of payment after payment after payment to them personally by companies and countries that had interests in matters before the State Department that were resolved to their satisfaction after they gave the money, particularly the uranium deals that Russia was pushing, you're talking about something that clearly should be disqualifying for a person to be president and perhaps should be indictable.
One of the biggest problems with American politicians today is the fact that they are so ingrained with corporations that it's almost impossible to tell the two apart. And this whole Ready for Hillary camp within the Democratic Party is just as bad as the Republican Party. Here's a great example. Today, a story came out showing that one of Hillary Clinton's former staffers went to work for TransCanada, the company in Canada trying to put the Keystone XL pipeline right through America down to the Gulf Coast. During a 10-week period, this former Hillary Clinton campaign spokeswoman was paid $53,000 to get guests on broadcast news, on radio, and quoted in newspapers denouncing environmentalists, trying to change the dialogue over the Keystone XL debate. Now, these are the kind of people that Hillary Clinton surrounds herself with and always has. And this is not the first conflict of interest that's arisen with Hillary Clinton over the Keystone XL pipeline. After all, while she was at the State Department, she was overseeing the review of the entire project, while several other of her staffers were former TransCanada lobbyists. Hillary Clinton should call herself a Republican. That is what she is. Anybody who says otherwise is lying to themselves. Look at her history. Look at her ties. Look at the money that's going into her campaigns. When she ran for Senate, who was her top funder? Wall Street banks.
I represented Wall Street as a senator from New York. I represented Wall Street as a senator from New York.
You are not for Glass-Steagall. You are not for putting a firewall between this speculative, risky, shadow banking behavior. I am. And the people of our country need a president who's on their side, willing to protect the Main Street economy from recklessness on Wall Street.
We're here right in front of the White House with our new guest named
Allison.
Allison. So Allison's going to be playing Candidates Cribs with us, and you are going to try and guess which candidate has lived in which mansion. First up, we've got what I'm calling the Embassy Estate. Who do you guys think of these candidates has lived in the Embassy Estate?
Let's go with Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio. I like the way you say Rubio. Say it again.
Rubio.
I'll go with Ben Carson.
Dr. Ben Carson has lived in the Embassy Estate. That's what we're going with. All right. Next up, the Countryside Castle. Who you got?
I'll go with Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush making bank. The Hampton Hideaway. A cool $11 million. So who do you think is able to afford that?
Mark Rubio.
Senator Marco Rubio from Florida.
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson. All right, he's making that neurosurgeon money. Last, but certainly not least, is the Beachside Bungalow.
Donald Trump.
No doubt that you think Donald's the one that can afford that?
Yep. Yes.
For the Beachside Bungalow, who do we think lives in the Beachside Bungalow?
I'm going to say Marco.
What if I told you that all four of these were Hillary Clinton?
What?
What? Really? Hold on, you're pulling my leg.
No way. Are you serious?
Oh, wow. Are you serious? Are they really? Damn, then she does have that kind of money.
All right, well now you're changing my opinion on the election a little bit.
I'm very surprised. I did not know Hillary Clinton had that much money. At all. At all.
Bill Clinton had put together the Clinton Global Initiative. It is money being raised for very, very good causes. Now, I don't know the details of all the work that they do, but maybe I'm naive, but I trust them to be doing great work throughout the country and throughout the world. Okay. Now, after Hillary Clinton stepped down as head of our State Department, she also joined the Clinton Global Initiative, and so did Chelsea Clinton. So they're a part of it now as well. Now, while she was Secretary of State, the initiative had stopped taking money from foreign countries. Makes sense. Here's Hillary Clinton, the wife of Bill Clinton, who's Secretary of State. Some foreign countries might want to influence her by perhaps giving money to the Clinton charity, right? Now, apparently, that has been lifted. And for quite some time, they have been taking money, again, since Hillary Clinton stepped down from the State Department. And a Wall Street Journal has an article about that. So here are some of the recent donors to the Clinton Initiative. United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Australia, Germany, and not just Canada, but the Canadian government agency promoting the Keystone XL pipeline. Yeah, I wonder why they'd want to give to Hillary Clinton, who might be the next president of the United States. Interesting. Well, in fact, let's go to that. Wall Street Journal explains, one of the 2014 donations comes from a Canadian agency promoting the proposed Keystone pipeline, which is favored by Republicans and under review by the Obama administration. The Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development Agency of Canada, a first-time donor, gave between $250,000 and $500,000. The donations are given in ranges, but we know through another public appearance that the number is $480,000. So they've never given to the Clinton Foundation before. She might be the next president of the United States. They just happen to write a $480,000 check for the first time just in case she might be able to have a decision-making power over Keystone XL pipeline. Now, anybody think this might be, at the very least, the appearance of corruption? Now, I don't know what Hillary Clinton's motives are, and look, she's not collecting money for herself, she's collecting it for her charity. Understand that, right? And maybe she's pure as the driven snow, and she's not going to be influenced by any of this. But does it at least give the appearance of corruption? Obviously. And are the donors giving the money so that they can have favor with her? Of course, of course. Here, I'll give you more. The United Arab Emirates, a first-time donor, gave between $1 million and $5 million in 2014. A previous donor, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has given between $10 million and $25 million since the foundation was created in 1999. Part of that came in 2014, although the database doesn't specify how much. Now, if Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and these other Gulf countries were that interested in the human rights and welfare and health care, et cetera, all the different things that the Clinton Global Foundation is pushing, they could have showed it in other ways. If I'm Hillary Clinton, I go to Saudi Arabia and I say, hey, you know what? Keep your $25 million, let women drive, and we'll call it a deal. You think they care about the charity? You think they care about the causes that the Clinton Initiative is pushing? No, they care about influencing the next leader of the United States of America. It's the most obvious thing in the world. Yet the Clintons keep taking that money. They're trying to build a $250 million endowment. Again, this is not a slight on the foundation. I'm sure it does great work. But you can't do this. You know they're trying to influence you. That's obvious. And you know that it looks like it is corruption, even if it's for a charity, let alone what it actually is. I mean, you're going to take a $10 to $25 million check from somebody and you're not going to be influenced by them at all? When they come calling, they're not going to be able to get you to return that favor? Even if you don't believe that Hillary Clinton has bad motives, you think she's the most pure person in the world, you're not at least swayed by the fact that they did you this enormous favor? Any human being would be. So at a bare minimum, this looks terrible.
It is difficult to separate the Clintons' personal and political financial ventures from those of the Clinton Foundation. The New York Times expose on the Clinton Foundation details moral and fiscal chaos, shameless fundraising, and calls it mired in conflicts of interest. Run by old Clinton friends, it has been grossly mismanaged and, despite enormous donations, ran multi-million-dollar deficits. Secretary of State Clinton traveled to Moscow and pressed the Russian government to purchase planes from Boeing. 2 months later, contract in hand, Boeing donated $900,000 to the Clinton Foundation. The foundation's support from foreign interests hoping to influence U.S. policy is of grave concern. Foreign donations to the foundation increased by 70% when Hillary Clinton ran for president in 2008. Saudi Arabia has financed terrorists, has an abysmal women's rights record, and punishes homosexuality by death. And yet, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is one of the largest supporters of the Clinton Foundation. In a Clinton co-presidency, every large donation could raise suspicions of improprieties or influence peddling and lead to non-stop investigations. Many qualified and deserving politicians, Democrat and Republican, women and men, are waiting to lead this country.
We're going to do the best we can to level with people, and then we're going to let them make up their minds, because I think if the American people get a chance, and if they're trusted to exercise their vote right, because people talk to them about real issues, this country will be okay.
Question for you Democrats. Do you really want a liar this brazen in the White House?